Okay. Sanjay, please go ahead. Kedar, do you want to just introduce the session first?
Yes, yes. So this is our first session of Travel Diaries we have started. The main reason is because everyone is quarantined here and there are a lot of people who, have traveled abroad. So while sitting here, we can go along with them on their journeys along with them. So they will be able to recollect where all they have gone and what all experiences they have gone through. And we will also be able to enjoy sitting at home here. So on our first travel diaries here, we have Ameeta Manjeshwar and Sanjay Chikarmane, who are going to tell about Galapagos Islands on their journey. So we can travel virtually along with them on this journey. So I hand it over to you, Sanjay and Ameeta.
Okay, thank you. So I think Ameeta needs no introduction, but I'm her less famous cousin. So let me introduce myself.
Sanjay?
Yeah.
1 second. What I was going to do is I'm not going to be able to send that presentation. I've tried. Let me just go through my presentation because it sets the context for what you're going to do. And then you can do that because that's better because otherwise nobody will get any context to what I'm doing. Unfortunately, it's too bad that I can't send the presentation.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining and so sorry for the technical difficulties. In my work life, I had a laptop and I don't have a laptop and I thought my iPad would be able to do what I was hoping to do, but unfortunately it's not. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through my slides and then I'll try and send it to you. So then you'll have some context to it. So my story started a long time back, and many of you who've got emails from me or texts from me will know what my mantra is. My mantra is travel is the only thing that you can buy that makes you richer. Unfortunately, this is an anonymous quote. Who knows who it is? And it's always been my dream, and I live it pretty much now. So when did my travel bug all begin? It began in 2008 when all of you know, and I don't know if Vijay is on the line, he may be on the line, but it all began in 2008 when I joined a group of people going down to Egypt. And pretty much Vijay Nilekini had got this big group together and we all traveled to Egypt and had the most wonderful experience. And I came back and I said, that's all I want to do in life, pretty much work and travel. So then in 2015 is when it actually took flight. My work started moving stuff to, we were going through a lot of changes. My work started moving stuff to India and to Singapore. And I used to work in a group that was internal systems. So we knew that we were first going to be impacted. I'd already put in about 13 years. And any time after that, we were expecting to either get laid off or moved. So then I decided I'm just going to use my PTO and travel the world. So 2015 is when I first began my travels. And from 2015 till the last one, which is Galapagos, I put a footprint in 37 or 38 countries. Now, when I say footprint, what happens is I've gone to London and done all of Europe and come back to London. So I put my footprint back in London multiple times. So I think I've done about 36, 37 countries between 2015 and 2019 when we went to the Galapagos. So Galapagos, why, when, and where? Why? My reasons. It's very strange, but Galapagos and New Zealand were one of my top bucket list travels. And it's so ironic that I'm almost doing it now towards the end when we are in a lockdown, and who knows when we will ever be able to go again. So Sanjay, who's my co-presenter, is also not only just a co-presenter, he's my brother. He's like a cousin, but I keep telling everybody he's like the brother to me over here in the US. We both share this innate love of travel and photography. I'm a novice. My camera is my iPhone, and Sanjay, you have to see, Sanjay, you had pictures of your cameras, but he's got these amazing cameras and lenses. So what you'll see in the end of this presentation is literally amazing pictures from Galapagos. So around November of 2019, I get a call from Sanjay saying, hey, we are going either planning to go to the Galapagos or Tahiti. Would you like to join? And I immediately put up my hand for Galapagos. Tahiti, I was not so interested because we just come back from New Zealand then. But literally overnight, in a week's time, we both sat and made dozens and dozens of calls because we were going during the Christmas break because Mansi, who's my niece and Sanjay's daughter, was only free then, made calls and talks and emails. And finally, we got what they then said was the last 4 seats on this little boat. So, journey for Galapagos, planning for Galapagos began, and we decided we would fly into Quito, spend a couple of days in Quito, fly to the Galapagos, and on the way back, since we had a long flight and a 10-hour halt either in Houston or Panama City, guess what we chose? We chose Panama City. And so more about that as we go ahead. So now my next slide, unfortunately, is a little map, which actually Sanjay has as well. And the map talks about the Galapagos site that we went to. So Galapagos is divided both into the Eastern Islands and the Western Islands. And from what I see, and Sanjay can correct me, I'm looking at it, we went to 5 Eastern Islands. So spending a couple of days in Quito, we then went on to the Galapagos on this very cute little boat. And I wish I could share the picture. I don't know, Sanjay has a picture. He'll be able to send the picture. And my slide actually calls it Home Away from Home. It was this little boat which had 8 rooms. And so it held about 16 passengers. And we divided, the entire group that was there in our on our trip was from pretty much all over the world. We were 4 of us from the US. There were 2 of them from Canada, a couple from Germany, a couple from Switzerland, and a couple from Australia, and then guess what? A couple who had just come in from China. And this happened right before coronavirus. But all of us so far, we've kept in touch with the fellow passengers, are all fine and safe. So the next I was going to present, and I was going to talk a little bit more, but I think I will leave a lot of it then now move over to Sanjay. But I've just got pictures of the fascinating Galapagos and a preview of the amazing inhabitants there. There are iguanas, there are birds, there are turtles, there are sea turtles, there are land turtles, land iguanas, sea iguanas, water iguanas, and the amazing birds that unbelievable. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen so many birds and so many different kinds of birds that we've never ever seen in our life. The most popular bird in the Galapagos is the blue-footed booby. And I was so ignorant. I mean, my prep for Galapagos was just my clothes and where we're going to stay. I never paid attention. I didn't even know that the blue-footed booby was one of their more popular birds. But that's another story when there are no kids in there on this call. Anyway, so the next one we had 2 very, very sweet interludes with sea lions. Sea lions are just amazing. You get off the boat and you come into onto the beaches, and what you see is just mounds and mounds and mounds of sea lions. There are generally 1 male, an alpha male, and along with him the females and their puppies. And there were lots of little pups all around. So it was really amazing. Now, at one point, one of my fellow travelers and me we actually got behind because we were trying to take some pictures, and we came across the sea lion with his 2 females and a baby. And all they do is, and we're literally a foot away. I mean, believe me, there are tons of sea lions and you're only a foot away from the iguana and you're a foot away from the sea lions. They ask you not to go closer than a foot. Now the sea lions look at you, they put their head up, they blink, and they put their head down and just ignore you. Now, on the other side of the sea lion were 2 females and the pup. And so we wanted to go there closer to take a picture. And oh my God, the sea lion from this gentle guy who just used to open his eyes and blink and look at us, turned around and growled at us, and that we had to run away. The second interlude we had with another baby pup sea lion whose mother had gone fishing, and you have no idea, other than the fact that this sea lion didn't speak, he would literally come to us begging either for us to look for his mom or look for food, or he thought we were one of his mothers. So it was absolutely adorable. He kept following us and stopped us in our tracks and looked at us and would look at us with these sheepish eyes, and it was like, you know, just totally amazing. So then another big part of the Galapagos Islands are the tortoises. And I had one time when I went really close to it, and they're so gentle, they're huge, and they just walk past you. But once I got really close to one of the tortoises, and oh my God, the tortoise gave me such a hiss that I literally had almost fell over. I would have fallen over a couple of tortoises, poor things, but I managed. The two very popular tortoises of the Galapagos, one of them was called Lonesome George, and he's a little different from the regular tortoises. Most of the tortoises, and unfortunately I've got these pictures that I can't show you, but the tortoises have flatter backs, but this particular breed of tortoises, which is more or less extinct, there was one very famous tortoise called Lonesome George, and he's a saddleback. They literally have a saddle like it's on a horse, and they have his they've actually preserved him. You can go and see it just for like a minute, and almost if he stands, he's almost 3 or 4 feet tall. He's got that long legs. And now what they have, and he was found in the Pinta area of the Galapagos. And then also in Spain, they've discovered another subspecies of the saddleback, and they have him there. Actually, they found one of them in the San Diego Zoo. San Diego Zoo then donated him to the Charles Darwin Center, and he's there now. And guess what his name is? I mean, if you're on mute, others have asked you to guess. His name is Diego. Now they have been able to breed and been able to produce a lot of the subspecies of saddlebacks. Unfortunately, Lonesome George, when they found him in the Pinta area, was about 80 years old, and he survived, I think, 30 more years, but they were not able to breed him to have any more of his DNA passed on. But Diego has tons, and they've got a lot of DNA. He's 130 years old, and I believe he's still having. He's still being able to multiply, I guess. So then I've got some pictures, and I would have loved to show you those. This was great. So what you do is we get off the boats, we get into these little dinghies and go onto the beachfront. Most of the time, the beachfront, you're putting your feet in the water. They call it a wet landing and a dry landing. Very few of it was dry landing. Most of the time, you're putting your foot into the waters, walking knee deep into water onto the beaches where all these beautiful land animals are, the iguanas, the sea lions, etc. The turtles are mostly in protected farms, protected areas, but the sea lions and the iguanas and the birds are all over the place. So that part is really easy. What I said what I was trying to show you in this picture it's not easy, is the land animals are at the beach level and the birds are up on the cliffs. Now you literally have to climb up those rocks to go up the cliffs. And that's when I realized I'm so glad I did Galapagos now and didn't wait for, next maybe 4 years down the line when I may not have been able to do that kind of climbing. Climbing is not difficult, but they're like rocks created of lava with crevices, and they're all different sizes and shapes. And so you literally have to sometimes jump across a rock and all kinds of things. The other thing when I said not easy, a big part of this Galapagos trip is snorkeling, because you see a lot of the animals under the water. I mean, the sea life under the water. Now that I had a very bad experience. A lot of times we actually didn't have the guts to go out when they went mid-sea, but when you're swimming off the beaches, I tried, and I got stuck between a rock and literally had to shout for help, and Mansi and the tour guide were a little in front, and he was able to come back and help me out of the rocks. But after that, I think I gave up on, I think I'm done with snorkeling. And I've said it's not easy, but it can be, because I've got this picture of us swimming in the water. The water is beautiful, it's calm, it's peaceful when you're near the shore, and it's blue and warm. And so we spent a lot of time in the water, and then sleeping on the deck. So I have this other picture of me sleeping on the deck. We come back, and the entire top of the boat was this fabulous deck with deck chairs that you could literally spend time on. So then the other thing I wanted to show you guys was, which is really sad that I cannot, is what is a Konkani travelogue without having any pictures on food. The food in the Galapagos was okay, but the empanadas were to die for. We literally went from any restaurant we went, we'd first ask them whether they had empanadas. Not so much in Galapagos. This was mostly in Quito. Galapagos, the food was average, lots and lots and lots of vegetables, but and seafood, but not so much meat, which works out perfect for us, because you really can't go on travels. The main problem, even though you're not vegetarian, the main problem when you travel is to eat a lot of meat every day. And then, so then I had these pictures of all my different kinds of empanadas. And unfortunately, that I can't. So that, in short, is mine. I would have gone more into details, but if you don't see a picture, there's no context. But so what I did so far, I called Ameeta's story. And what I'm going to do now is transition is to Sanjay's story, where he talks about all the sea lions, marine life, etc. He does a presentation on Quito and Panama City. So with all that and apologies, I hand it over to Sanjay.
Hey, thanks, Ameeta. And by the way, if you see any of your pictures here, feel free to chime in.
Sure.
All right, so let's move forward. So as Ameeta said, we started off our trip in Quito, and Quito is a place to see on its own, and will also take quite a bit of time. So I won't actually spend too much time here, but I thought I'd just share a few pictures, just from the perspective of introduction. So the thing about Quito is it's right off of the equator, as you can see here, and normally it should be really hot. But the thing is, it's up in the Andes. It's almost the same elevation as Cusco if you've been to Peru. So it's a very high elevation, 9,000 or 10,000 feet, somewhere in that range. So actually the weather is quite mild and quite tolerable. And we spent about, I think we spent probably 3 days or something like that. So as you can see here, hopefully my slides are advancing. So it's like any other South American capital. If you've been to, let's say, a city in Mexico or let's say Peru or even Spain for that matter. So these generally have a old town, and then the old town at the center of the old town is usually a plaza that you can see here, and there are a ton of people that are milling around, and it's quite normal to see these street performances with the whole crowd gathered. And I've generally seen this in any South American or Spanish capital, and so this one was no exception. The other thing that you often see in these Latin American countries is there is usually at some high point, there is a statue of either the Virgin Mary, as in this case, or Christ the Redeemer with the arms outstretched, right? I mean, you might be familiar with the one in Rio, but there are the same things in a lot of other capitals as well. So this one again is no exception, and you could pretty much see this thing from any part of the city. The other thing that this has, the other part that is worth seeing is they have some magnificent cathedrals, some really large ones, and you can actually go all the way to the top. As you can see here, this is we went up to the top of the third spire. So you can see 2 spires there in front of you. There was a third one, and that's the one that we were going up on. This is from approximately midway. It seemed like a very nice shot, but we ended up going all the way to the top, and they had some really hard to climb iron ladders. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. Wasn't a full staircase, So it was quite a interesting experience getting up to the top. This is the inside of it, again made for a nice architectural picture. And Ameeta mentioned empanadas, and this is one of the places we actually ate it. In fact, this cafe was right in front of our hotel, and in the back you can see this yellow building, and to the right side, a little bit further down, was the entrance to our hotel. So again, the empanadas were actually to die for, and while the rest of the food was quite bland, that is the one thing that we ordered just about every single time. Now, the other part about Quito is that not far away from the center of town is where the equator actually passes. Now, they have this thing called the Equator Monument. It's I think it's called, I forget what the Spanish term for it is, but it translates to Equator Monument. And now this is not where the equator actually passes, but commercially, years back, they thought this is where the equator did pass. So they built this monument and everybody goes there. But if you want to see the real equator, you have to, it's about just 5 or 10 miles away. And this is where the actual equator is. And here they have some pretty nice demonstrations of, a sink with water in it. And on the left side, it swirls one way. On the other side, it swirls the other way. And then on the line itself, it goes straight through. I mean, it's a little bit questionable, the science of it, whether they actually make it that way, go that way, or whether it really happens. But nevertheless, it's good fun. And then this is the last shot. You saw the earlier picture where you have the Virgin Mary. This is taken from that spot right at the foot of Virgin Mary. And the nice thing about it is the view. You can pretty much see the whole downtown part of Quito, and you can see the cathedral and the third spire right in between that I talked about earlier. So this is basically a quick whirlwind tour of Quito. So now I want to just talk about the main show, which is the Galapagos Islands. So it's actually quite a chore getting from Quito to the Galapagos Islands. So at the airport itself, they're very strict that you don't bring any disposable plastic items. So from that perspective, the government of Ecuador has done a really good job of making sure that these islands stay as pristine as possible, and you don't have any plastic waste that doesn't biodegrade, right? So they check all the bags and everything, and then there is no direct flight. Actually, there is a stopover before you get here. And then you get on this, the main island in the Galapagos is Santa Cruz Island. So this is where all the flights, most of the flights come in and go. And so when you go to Galapagos, the tours there are pretty standardized. So while you have a choice of different tour companies, the tours themselves are highly regulated by the government. And you can do either the Western Islands tour or the Eastern Islands tour. So we chose to do the Eastern. Now the Western Islands are also great. You basically can't go wrong with either one. We just had a very tough time deciding. In the end, we decided on the Eastern Islands, but you pretty much see a lot of wildlife in both places. The Eastern Islands are more mature. They were the first to emerge from the bottom of the ocean, so they are more vegetated. The Eastern Islands, which are Isabella and Fernandina, which is the two that we didn't see, are still relatively new. So they're mostly lava type landscape, not a whole lot of vegetation, but they've still got a lot of wildlife. So when we landed here, we landed in this little island called Baltra off Santa Cruz, and that's basically an airport island. There's nothing but an airport there. And then from there, you can see the red line going down to this place called Puerto Ayora. That's the main town in Santa Cruz, and our hotel was somewhere in the middle between Baltra and Puerto Ayora. So let's just see. Let's go to Santa Cruz. So the first thing we did was we went to the beach. There's a very famous beach there where you can see a lot of wildlife, and the wildlife there was amazing. So the first thing that we saw was the marine iguana. So the marine iguanas are similar to the land iguanas, but in fact, at one time there were only land iguanas. Apparently, they came to the Galapagos on a raft, And then once they arrived at the Galapagos, the land iguanas split from the marine iguanas, and the marine iguanas adopted a marine lifestyle. So basically what they do is they go into the ocean to feed, and they actually feed on the algae that is underneath. And then depending on the island they live on, they eat different types of algae, and they develop different colors. So this one is, as you can see, it's mostly brown and black, but we'll see some pretty colorful marine iguanas in some other islands here. So this is another photograph from the side, and then another close-up. And the thing about capturing animals is you really have to get down to their eye level. If you just stand up and take a picture looking down on them, that doesn't make for a very good picture. So to get down, I had to, I came prepared with knee pads because my knees are not that great. So having those knee pads really helped. Although in the beach, it's actually fairly soft sand, so not a problem. But, the wildlife here is pretty amazing. The iguanas were pretty amazing. As you can see, this one has got shades of green even. And then the other thing you see is a lot of wading birds. This one is called a ruddy turnstone. And as you can see, it's got a little crab. It's got a crab, and there are plenty of these wading birds that you see around as well. Now, this one was really interesting. This is a heron. It's called a lava heron. It's endemic, which means it's only found in Galapagos. And I just caught, as I was looking at the iguanas, I caught sight of this one from the corner of my eye. And what it's doing is it's caught sight of a fish in the water. And when I saw that, I just pointed my camera to it, and you'll see the sequence here. So it's now spotted that fish. And now you can see it's really aiming for it, about to make its move. And at this point, it has actually caught the fish. It's made the plunge. And now you can see it's got the fish. It's adjusting that fish in its mouth, about to swallow it. And then finally, after it swallows it, it looks back at me and gives me the stare, and as if to say, what the hell is going on here? But it was a pretty amazing sequence to actually see these birds actually do their thing. Now, this is a Sally Lightfoot crab, very colorful. And the reason they're called Sally Lightfoot crabs is they are probably the most agile crabs in the world. It's very hard to catch them. And they're very perceptive. So for example, if you walk after one slowly, they will move away slowly. But then if you increase your speed, they will increase your speed too. And apparently, and I didn't try this, of course, but what I've read is that if you try to, for example, use a fishing net to reach out to one and catch them, they can actually jump. Most crabs don't jump, but these guys can actually leap from rock to rock. And they're very fleet-footed, and their eyesight is just tremendous, and they're very colorful. And there are several of them that we saw through the islands that you'll see as we go on here. Now, these are finches. If you've read about the Galapagos and you've read about Charles Darwin and evolution and so forth, one of the ways that Darwin discovered evolution was by studying these finches. Now, these finches were originally from the mainland. They came from somewhere in South America. But after they came to the Galapagos, probably carried there by some winds or storm or whatever, they settled in different islands. And depending on the food supply in those islands, they evolved differently. And the main thing that distinguishes the finches of one island from another is their beak. So in some islands, for example, you have very hard and large seeds. So these birds have evolved large beaks. In other islands, the seeds are very small and maybe soft, and so their beaks are much smaller. Now, these are all the same species. But then as you go from island to island, you'll see these finches, all with different beak sizes, which are all adapted to the local food supply. So that's one of the clues that Darwin got to come up with his theory of evolution. Now, this is a lava lizard, and these are very plentiful, and probably the most plentiful reptile in the Galapagos Islands. And this is a female, and you can tell because the females have this red colored throat. The males are actually more colorful. They don't have the red, but the backs are striped with some pretty bright colors, and I might have a photo or two down the road here. But these are lava lizards. As Ameeta was talking about earlier, this is the giant tortoise. So on the Santa Cruz Island, there are a few different tortoise sanctuaries where they actually breed these tortoises, and these tortoises actually come to the highlands. So every island is literally a mountain, right? So there's the higher elevations, which are called highlands, and then you've got the lower elevation, which is much more desert-like. The highlands are much better vegetated because they get a lot of rain. And so during the breeding season, they come up to the highlands. And fortunately, when we went there, it was the breeding season. And you'll see proof of that here in a minute. But this is a close-up. And there you go. So this is where they come to breed. And then once they've laid their eggs, then they move down into the lowlands where they feed on the cactus in the lower altitudes. So that was the Santa Cruz Island. So that was before we actually got on the yacht. So at the end of that day, we actually went on the yacht, and the first stop that the yacht made was this island, which is very close to the main island of Santa Cruz, called the South Plazas Island. And this island, of all the islands, was literally teeming with life, all kinds of life. So it was actually an amazing island to visit. The other thing about South Plazas is the fact that it's covered by this red vegetation. It's some kind of a succulent. And what we see here is the land iguana. So we saw the marine iguana earlier, and the land iguana is its cousin. So like I said earlier, when iguanas first came to the Galapagos, they were just one species, and then they later on split into land and marine iguanas. And so this is the land iguana. And as the name indicates, it feeds mainly on the vegetation on land as opposed to the marine. Now this island, as I said, has got its own beauty. The thing that is most striking about it is the red ground cover, and then you have these forests of cacti that you can see here. And then you can see some here, a little bit of a close-up of the cactus on the left, but similar landscape. And then here you can see it's mostly this succulent. I forget the name of this, begins with S, but the guide told us about this, but it makes for a very beautiful landscape. And then there are plenty of birds. Now this is the swallowtail gull. So it's a seagull, and normally its head is just white. It just matches the rest of the body. It's just like the seagulls that we see here in California. But then this particular gull, which is endemic to Galapagos, during the breeding season, its head becomes black, and the eye ring becomes a brilliant red, becomes very, very pretty among gulls, as you can see here. Here's a close-up. By the way, they of all the gulls, they are supposed to have the best night vision. In fact, they hunt for food on the ocean at night. And so they have very large eyes, and the night vision is supposed to be excellent. So here you see two gulls. They are in a courtship ritual. So again, when we went, it was the breeding season for gulls as well. So a lot of these gulls were either in courtship, or they had their nests and they had eggs or chicks in various different stages. And so here's one which has a nest, and the nest is really very basic. It's just depression in the ground, and it probably has an egg underneath there. And then here you can see a gull with a chick that it's feeding. And then here you can see another gull watching a land iguana walk by. Now, the other thing in this island is that once you hike past all of these things we saw, you get to a cliff. And when you stand on that cliff, you basically have a window to an amazing variety of birds that fly by the cliff, because a lot of these birds make their homes on the cliff. And this is the first time we saw the iconic blue-footed booby that Ameeta talked about in a minute. And I saw something unusual going on, pointed my camera, took the shot, and then when I looked at it afterwards, it turned out that it was actually scratching an itch on its chin. And so you can see the bird in the process of doing that. And then here it's pretty much done. And then finally here it's all done. And now it's just flying just like normal. But this was the first sight of the blue-footed booby. We didn't, on this island, we actually didn't see them stationary or nesting or anything like that. That comes later on. But we were all pretty excited to see one in flight, and it was quite far away. I mean, but for the lens that I had, I probably wouldn't even have known it was a booby until the guy actually pointed it out. And then there are other birds too. This is the frigate bird, and the frigate bird you can see on other islands, and we'll see a number of pictures of it as well. The thing about the frigate bird that is quite unique, it rarely catches its own food. And that is because it doesn't like to actually get wet with salt water. Because unlike other birds, they don't generate the same oils. And so when the salt water comes on it, it just sticks. The water evaporates, and they get logged with salt. And so they don't like to catch their own food. So instead, what they do is they watch other birds dive into the water, catch the food, and then when they've emerged with their fish, they go harass them. The birds let go of the food, the fish, and then as the fish falls, they actually dive and catch it. So that is the predominant way of getting food for these birds. This is the same frigate bird, actually, a little further down in flight, and it's also scratching itself or preening itself mid-air, as you can see. And then on the cliff, you have a lot of different types of bird life. This is a gray pelican, and this is basically the same species that you see in California. It's the same gray pelican that goes up and down the coast all the way down to South America. So you can see here, preening itself. This is the tropic bird, and it's pretty distinctive by virtue of its orange beak and its sharp, long tail. And these guys also, just like a lot of the other seabirds, they eat fish, mostly by catching them at the surface. So they look out for flying fish. And when they see fish leaping into the air, they dive and catch it, or sometimes they even dive into the water to actually get them. And this is yet another tropic bird flying. So I'll also pepper this talk with a little bit for those of you who are interested in photography. I won't get too detailed here, but the way you catch birds in flight is, first of all, you got to have a long lens. And the second thing is you want to also make sure that you have a high shutter speed so that you can actually catch them in flight without them getting blurred. And then the second thing the final thing you also need is light. And so therefore you need to keep your aperture pretty wide. So again, happy to take any questions if you guys have any specific questions in that area. Now these are called Audubon shearwaters, and they're also seabirds, obviously, if you can see from the web feet. And in these rocks are their eggs. So they spend most of their time at sea, and it's only during the breeding season they come on land for laying their eggs. So this pair probably has a nest somewhere in these rocks. There's the same pair again, and it's actually heading towards its nest. Now here's another Sally Lightfoot crab. So on the hike back from the cliff back to the boat, we passed many of these crabs that were actually a fair distance away from the water. They'd actually climbed up, on the island and were sunning themselves on these rocks. The other thing that's distinctive about them is that they walk on their tiptoes. A lot of other crabs, they are flat on the ground, whereas these crabs, in addition to being very agile, they also tend to walk on the absolute tips of their feet, as you can see here. All right, so that was Plaza's Island. And so the next thing, the next island, so basically the way the tour works is you go out during the day, the boat stops at an island, you typically take a hike. Typically there are 2 or 3 hikes sometimes, or there might be 1 or 2 hikes and for those who are into snorkeling and things like that, you can go snorkeling, or you can just sit on the beach. But during the night is when the boats move from island to island. So that way, during the day, you can utilize the time for, wildlife, whether it's above water or underwater. And so the next stop for us was this island called San Cristobal Island. Now, what happened was that before it actually got to the island, the plan was for the morning for people to go snorkeling. And apparently one of the better places to go snorkeling is right by this rock. Now, this rock is actually called Kika Rock. It's a very famous landmark in Galapagos. And people actually go around snorkeling around that. It's deep water, and there are supposed to be a lot of shark. Now, the sharks don't actually attack people, even though they are sometimes hammerhead sharks and so forth. There's no record of them attacking people. It's a very popular place for snorkeling. Now, my preference is to actually bias my time towards either photography or hiking. I'm not so much of a snorkeler. I did go once or twice, snorkeling once or twice in shallow water, but this wasn't my thing. I preferred to stay on the boat and take pictures like this one, and this one is from a slightly different angle. But then the people that did go that day turned out that as soon as they got into the water, they were stung by jellyfish. So they got right back into the boat, and then they came back onto the yacht. So that was quite an experience, according to some of the people. The scenery on this island was very beautiful, as you can see here, and you can see Kika Rock in the far background, and to the left of it, you'll see a slightly bigger version as well coming up, but to the left of it is a yacht. Yet another scene from the same island. Again, this was a very beautiful island. And yet another one. And so that's us on the island. And you can also see Ameeta is ready for snorkeling. She's got her snorkeling gear on. You can't see all of it, but. And on the same island, we also saw pretty close up a Galapagos hawk. So this is the main, one of the main predators on all of the Galapagos Islands. That you can find them on all of the islands. And they mostly go for smaller prey. That includes insects and snakes and sometimes, juvenile iguanas. That's what it comprises its diet. And then momentarily, it just seemed like it was going to fly away, and all it did was hop from that rock at the back to one closer to us, and we were able to get. I was able to get this really cool close up. Now, the one thing about most wildlife in Galapagos is that they're not afraid of people, and the reason for that is they haven't seen that many people. They've been isolated on those islands for, thousands or millions of years, and so they really don't know what it is to be near people, and so they don't have a fear of people. So the benefit of that, I mean, obviously there are pluses and minuses. The benefit is that you can get fairly close to them. It's not hard to take pictures, right? But obviously that also makes them very vulnerable. Now here's a picture of our boat, which is anchored off of the Kika Rock, and this was when we came off of it. And the way we get off of the boat, these islands, they don't have a jetty or a pier or anything like that, because they're all fairly undeveloped, deliberately so. And so the way you get from these boats, from the yacht to the island is on a rubber dinghy. And so we were on this dinghy, we were just dropped off on the island, and this was the picture looking back. Now, this island also uniquely among the Galapagos Islands had a freshwater lagoon. So the freshwater lagoon is actually a crater lake. So there was an old volcano, and there's water that fills the lake, and it's all fresh. And I talked earlier about these frigate birds and how they hated salt water because the bodies don't have oils, and salt water evaporates and leaves a whole load of salt in their feathers that they can't get rid of. Now it turns out that however hard they try, since they are ultimately flying near the ocean, they do get some salt water on their bodies. And so what these birds do is that every so often they come to this freshwater lagoon, and then they dive into it. And this is their way of both getting a drink, but also cleansing themselves of salt water, right? So this was it's like I said, it's a unique place in the whole Galapagos Island to have. It's actually pretty rare to have these freshwater lagoons, and these birds from all over come to this one particular lagoon to get a drink of water and to rid their feathers of salt. Now, this is a Galapagos dove. As you can see, it's got a very pigeon-like appearance, but obviously it's endemic to the islands, and so they've evolved differently. It looks different, has a different color, but you can still see that it's very pigeon or dove-like. And this is a ground. They feed on insects on the ground. So generally, when you see them, they're not on the tree, but they're typically on the ground looking around for food, as you can see here as well. Okay, so here's another land iguana. And a couple more facing offs, and these are probably males that are guarding their territory. And here's one of them up close. So that was the San Cristobal Island. That was the easternmost of the islands, and the next stop was this island down here, a small island called Hispaniola. And this is where we saw a lot of the sea lions that Ameeta was talking about. So basically, again, it was a wet landing. You get from the yacht into a rubber dinghy, and the dinghy takes you onto the beach. You get off that straight into the water, and so therefore wet landing, and then you walk to the shore. And then on the shore, you have these male sea lions like this one, each of them guarding a harem of females. As you can see, this one has got 4 of them here. And again, they're not afraid of people, and they even tolerate you coming up to a certain point. But when you get closer, they get the males get pretty bad-tempered and start to grunt and scare you away. So here's another sea lion with its harem. Now, as I said earlier, these marine iguanas, the ones on different islands are different colors, and the ones on Hispaniola are actually the best in terms of their coloration. So they've got a lot of these brilliant red colors with contrasting greens and blacks and so forth. So they're actually quite colorful on Hispaniola Island, as you can see here. And there are several of them. So as you get down on the beach, you spend some time around there watching the sea lions and so forth, and then your guide takes you on a hike. And then as you go along the way, you can see these marine iguanas sunning themselves. And as you can see, those that are on this island are very distinctly colored. Another one here. This is a warbler. This is a small bird, yellow with a head with a red crown. And the warbler is actually not endemic to the Galapagos. They can be found up and down the Pacific coast of North America. You can even see them here in the Bay Area. But they range as far down south as the Galapagos Islands. So here's another side view of it. Now, we saw the blue-footed booby earlier. There are actually 3 species of boobies on the island. This is the second of the species, and it's called the masked booby, or also known as the Nazca booby. It's the same name. And this is actually the largest of the 3 booby species. And you can see, here's one close up, and this is why it's called the masked booby. It's got a black face. And the nice thing about the time of the year that we went there was that it was the courtship and breeding season for a lot of the birds, including the masked booby. So as you can see here, you have a pair of boobies. They part of the courtship ritual is that they pick up these little rocks, and the one of them gives it to the other, and the other one gives it back. That's all part of the courtship ritual, and so we were quite fortunate to observe some of this. And then here's the culmination of all of that. And then finally, you see another one that's been further along in its process here. It's got a couple of eggs even. And then here's one with a chick. So these are masked boobies. The other species on this island, in fact, this island, Hispaniola, is the most famous for this bird. And this is the waved albatross. Now, the thing is that their breeding season happens a little earlier. So by the time we reached there, they had already had their breeding season. They had laid their eggs, and most of the chicks had hatched and grown up and all flown. But there were a few laggards that were still going through the process. So like this particular bird is still nesting. It's got it sitting on some eggs. And then, here's another close-up of the same bird. And this is another of those waved albatrosses in flight. Now, apparently, according to the guide, during the peak season for this bird, the island is just absolutely chock full of these birds, and you see nesting sites every few meters, right, where you have these pairs of albatrosses. But when we were there were just a few, and then this one is in flight. And then this is a chick, which is, growing up, and probably in a few weeks it would be ready to fly away. So those are waved albatrosses. And there were a couple of these swallowtail gulls that you saw earlier as well. This is one in flight. I really like to take pictures of birds in flight, because then they have their feathers all spread out and look pretty good. And then just as we were leaving the island, we saw these oyster catchers. They're actually American oyster catchers. Again, not only endemic to Galapagos, you see them in North America as well, hence the name. And obviously, as the name suggests, they feed on mollusks and oysters and things of that nature. This is a Galapagos mockingbird. You probably see mockingbirds here in the Bay Area as well. This is the Galapagos variety. They're very similar. It's hard to tell them apart. It's a little bit smaller on the Galapagos than what you see here. And then the landscape here is also very good. This is my wife, Shilekha. And then here we are with Mansi, our daughter, and Ameeta as well. And then there is the rest of the group enjoying the view and taking in. I think it was evening at the time, sun was setting, so I think we were ready to watch the sunset there. So that was Hispaniola. The next one was an island called Floriana. So, as you can see down there. Oops, now I need to switch to another thing. Meantime, Ameeta, I don't know if you have anything to add here while I...
No, all I can say is I'm reliving these pictures and remembering what an amazing time it was. But your pictures are absolutely fabulous. I mean, I'm sure all of you who are watching it will be like total awe of the pictures. But other than that, no, there's nothing. But where you see the birds, I just wanted, that's the part where I was talking about, is to get up there is not that not that easy. You know, you think Galapagos is all water, and when I went, I thought it was all on one level, but it's not. You're climbing these huge big rocks, and there's absolutely no natural. It's a natural path. They've just got markers to tell you how to go, but otherwise it's like totally crossing these humongous boulders and crevices and all that kind of stuff to get up there. But once you're up there, it's like unbelievable. I mean, it's just teeming with birds and fabulous vistas and views and stuff. So it's very hard to say, did you enjoy the land animals better, or do you enjoy the birds better? But it's just combination is I mean, it's a real treat. This is a once in a lifetime experience to go into the Galapagos.
Yeah.
So
Do you see this, Ameeta, the new thing? I just want to make sure that...
No, you're still seeing your old map, the Florenza,
Okay.
the map, yeah.
Let me stop sharing and share again. That should...
Yeah, and while we're talking about that, we actually, there were people who were after us doing the Western Islands as well. There were two professors, both from Canada, but one is a veterinarian in Kansas City, and they were finishing this, and then they were going on to the Isabella and the Ferdinand Island. And I think they have very similar. There was something, Sanjay, you might remember that's the only one. Basically, doing the Eastern Islands, there's only one thing that you miss that we didn't see.
Oh yeah. What we didn't see are the cormorants.
Cormorants, yes. Cormorants, yes.
Flightless cormorants.
Yeah.
So the thing about the Galapagos cormorants, so they can't fly. So they're flightless cormorants. That exists only on the big island of Isabella. Let's go back here. So are you seeing this now, by the way? Did you see the blue-footed booby here?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, good. So what Ameeta's talking about is this island called Isabella. That's the biggest and one of the newer islands. There is one bird that you see there that you don't see anywhere else, and that's the flightless cormorants. So these are cormorants that, look just like cormorants here, but they don't have, their wings are not strong enough or large enough to fly. But there are also the waved albatross, for example, can't be seen on Isabella, right? So it's like you get some and you lose some, and ultimately you've got to make a choice as to where you want to go. Okay, so now this is, let's see, what island was this one? Floriana, okay. So the thing that we saw in Floriana were the blue-footed boobies. You had seen one in flight earlier, but we saw here something which a lot of people come to Galapagos to see, which is the courtship ritual of the blue-footed boobies. And here we have one in action. So the courtship ritual begins by the male doing this sort of dance where they lift one foot and then lift the other foot and so forth. So you can see that in action here. And then once they're see, it's still doing it. So the female is off on the side here observing, and the male is doing its thing of lifting foot and so on. And then once they're done with the foot lifting thing, then what they do is they have this, I don't know what to call it, but they show off their feathers as it's doing here, and you'll see another view. Here's the view from how the female might be seeing it, directly front on. And then after they've done that, they actually bow, as you can see here. And then they do this over and over. So again, as you can see here, it's got its wings out. But we watched the whole... Yeah.
Sanjay, one sec. Just wanted to interject. This particular scene, this one female had 3 suitors, and we stood and we watched all 3, and ultimately waited till she chose one of them. And it's literally she chooses one of them, and the two of them go away, and the other 2 have to just stand back there and watch and look, and then turn around and fly away. That was an amazing experience. Go ahead. Sorry.
The female ultimately turns its back and walks away, and at that point, right? So it was an absolutely amazing experience to stand there and watch it happen. Now, not far away from the boobies, there's a lagoon, and where there are flamingos. So there are about a couple of islands where there are flamingos, and this was one of them. I really didn't know. I'd seen flamingos before. I didn't know they had black wingtips. but some of them were actually spreading their wings, and this is what you saw. And then this is a brackish lagoon, which means it's partly freshwater, partly saltwater, and so apparently they like that kind of thing here, and so you see a lot of these flamingos at this place. And then here's another one. Now, and then the next thing after this was we went to a beach which is well known for manta rays. You can actually wade in the water, and these rays come right up to your feet, and they sometimes, touch your feet with their tails or fins or whatever. You can actually feel them. And then the place is also very popular with these sea turtles. And so here you have a pair of males that is jousting for the right to be in that territory for, where there's also a female. So you see a lot of this happening. And this is the rubber dinghy that I was talking about. So this is how you go from the yacht onto the shore, because the shore most of these islands are undeveloped and they want to keep it that way. So the only way you can get in and out is on these rubber dinghies. So that was the Floriana Island. And then the next island was actually the longest overnight trip. In fact, this was most of these trips overnight are fairly short. So typically what happens is they wait until you go to sleep, and then after you've gone to sleep, the boat takes off, and then before you know it, before you are awake, the boat is already at its final destination. This was one of the longer ones, and it was also one of the rougher rides for us. So a lot of people, not a lot of people, maybe half the people got seasick. Some people enjoyed it, but nevertheless, it was a rough ride as well as one that was long. And because it was long, they had to start right after you had dinner. So that didn't make it any better for those that had the motion sickness. But the next day we got into the island, and before we actually got to the island were these birds. These are called storm petrels. And these are small birds, about the size of smaller than a pigeon. They look like pigeons, but they're very small, and they are very quick. And I noticed them right on top of the surface of the water, and I was very curious as to what might be happening, what might they be doing. And then as I got this picture, it turns out that they literally walk on water. Of course, they don't just, they use their wings as well. But as you can see, it's got one of its feet in the water, and then it pretty much walks on water, and then they pick off these little crustaceans or plankton, and sometimes even small fish, right? So here you can see another one again on the surface of the water. It's all very fast. So if you just look at it with the naked eye, you don't see much. But then when you get in there with a long lens and photograph them, you can actually see what they do. This is a great blue heron. It's not blue, but that's the name. And these are also not unique to Galapagos. You see them here in the US as well. In fact, if you go to where Ameeta lives in Foster City, these herons you can see there as well. Now this one was an interesting one because the previous picture was where it was just about to take off. And I always like to capture birds in flight. So soon after it took off, I was able to get this one. And then it made a fairly short flight, and it landed, as you can see here, with its wings outstretched. Now, this is a very volcanic island. And in a lot of places, you've got these holes where you can actually step down. And people step down and take these pictures like they're being swallowed. And this is Mansi, my daughter, pretending like she's swallowed by the lava. But it's a pretty interesting island to hike on. And this is the group. The yacht that we went on is behind us. As you can see, these are small group tours. By the way, if you go to Galapagos, there are also larger ships, like from the National Geographic and so forth. But the problem with the larger ships is there are just too many people. You want to go in a smaller group where the guide has, where it can be a little bit more leisurely, you're not being sort of herded around like cattle and so forth. So in some sense, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise that some of the more popular cruises were sold out so that we could actually go on a smaller boat. And it made the whole experience a lot more, personal, and we got more out of it, we felt. Another group picture, this is the guy that's sitting down is the actual guide. And like a lot of people in India, in the villages, right, he had no problems walking these sharp lava rocks barefoot, whereas the rest of us all had shoes and still made for a not the most comfortable experience. But this was amazing. By the way, the rock at the back, you can see the rock at the back, and on the left side there's a pointed thing there that's called the Pinnacle Rock. It's a very famous landmark in that part of the Galapagos. That's Pinnacle Rock again. This is as we were leaving on the rubber dinghy. You can see the sort of the trail of the boat. And this again is the Sally Lightfoot crab. And here you have a whole colony of them. It's pretty amazing sometimes. And so that was Santiago Island. And then the last island is Genovesa, which is the top right. That's the northernmost of the islands. And that was also a reasonably long trip, not as long as the previous one. Let's see what happened here. Actually, I need to switch to my next album here.
So while you're switching, I just wanted to talk a little bit briefly about the guide. This guide was so amazing. I just standing there in the distance where you could barely even see the birds, he could identify what those birds were. It was so, and the knowledge of almost every bird. The guys would all sit at night with their book and with their pictures, and he was able to literally, there were very few birds that he couldn't identify. Identified every bird, and then it's amazing what knowledge. But main thing was how he could spot them in the distance. And you'd wonder, from the distance, how would he even be able to tell what that bird was? But he was. So it was very, very commendable. We lucked out. He was a real good, very, very knowledgeable guide.
And by the way, they all have to pass an exam of some sort. So these guys are generally trained naturalists who've got a bachelor's degree in, at least a bachelor's degree in natural history, and then they've got to take some kind of an exam. So they're all pretty well qualified and very knowledgeable. Okay, so this was the last islet. This is the frigate bird. We saw some frigate birds earlier. I talked about the ones that took a dive in the fresh water to cleanse their feathers and so on. So this is one that's in flight. You can see with its wings outstretched. You can see the detail of the wings underneath. And there were a lot of frigate birds on this island. This is also a frigate bird up close. So the ones that were on this island are usually breeding, right? And during the breeding season, the males, they have this red pouch of air pouch that they use to attract the females. And so you can see this one is, in fact, you can see this picture here, you have the bird that is actually filled its sac up with air. So, it's there sitting there attracting, waiting for a female to be attracted to that. And then we also saw nests where there were chicks and the chicks had hatched. And this one, the chick is actually pretty grown. And you can see there the parent, I can't tell if it's the male or female, but they go off, get food. And if you remember what I said, how they get food, they don't catch the fish themselves. Instead, they harass birds that have already caught fish, and they swoop down and get that. And so then they come back and feed the young, as you can see here. And this is the same chick, as you can see, almost fully grown, but it still has some of its baby feathers on it. And this is a frigate bird, the full, not in breeding condition, but an adult male. And this is another one. This is the male also, which is up close. You can see the sheen on its feathers and the detail. And then this is a swallowtail gull that you've seen earlier in flight. And here's another one just taking off. Now this was pretty interesting. Now you saw the lava heron in one of my early slides that was like crouching and approaching this fish and striking and catching it. This is the same type of bird, a lava heron. Now, this was very unusual because it was striking this kind of a pose. It's like literally standing up bolt straight, and it's got its wings opened up towards the sky. I mean, we asked the guide why it was doing this. He didn't have an explanation. He joked. He joked about it, but presumably it's just trying to get some sun, get warmed up perhaps. But it was a very interesting pose that it struck. And here's the same bird again. Looks almost human. Looks more like a penguin, but it's actually the same lava heron that you saw earlier. Now this is the third type of booby. I mentioned there are 3 types of boobies on the island. You saw the blue-footed, you saw the masked or the Nazca booby, and this is the red-footed booby. This is the 3rd species of booby that's on the island. And obviously the distinctive features is its red feet. But the other thing about the red-footed booby is the fact that whereas the other boobies, they nest on the ground, these boobies, they nest on shrubs. In fact, you rarely see them on the ground. They're typically on these shrubs. These are not very tall trees or anything. These are just shrubs, maybe 3 or 4 feet. But you rarely see them on the ground. You always see them on the tree branch, like this. That's the distinctive behavior of the red-footed booby. So here's another one up on a branch. And then yet another one here. You notice that there is a chick on the bottom. That is its chick, and this is the parent. There are, by the way, a lot of other activities too, other than watching, hiking and seeing the animals. There are places where you can go ocean kayaking, like in this case, this is Mansi, my daughter, doing that. And then this is again rubber dinghy. There's Ameeta on the thing. And there's myself, and this is was like literally a nursery for these masked boobies. There were nests everywhere. Every few feet, you would find a nest, a nesting set of these masked boobies. And then here's a masked booby with a chick, and 1 egg still to hatch. Now there is sort of a dark side to these birds in the sense that they, unlike most birds whose eggs hatch more or less at the same time, for the masked boobies, the eggs hatch at different times. In fact, the second egg hatches much later than the first. And then when the second egg eventually hatches, the earlier chick is much bigger than the new chick. And it turns out that the bigger chick then pushes the smaller chick away from the nest. And so more often than not, the second chick doesn't survive as a result. And here you see the same, mother and chick with the egg. Now, this island is also home to the short-eared Galapagos owl. That's what this is. And these owls are very hard to spot. In fact, we hiked on this island, and for a while we never saw anything. And finally, one of the guides of another group that was coming back, they told us where to go look for what. And that's where we found this one. And then after that, we found a few more. So these are quite elusive, and they hide within these rock crevices. And then the reason that they hide, in these rock crevices is because their source of food are the storm petrels. Remember the bird that was walking on water? That is their main source of food. Now it turns out these storm petrels, they nest in these burrows in the ground. And so these owls wait there, waiting for those petrels to come. And then as soon as one comes, they pounce on them, or they wait to go inside and then come out and they pounce on them. So that's the source of their food. In fact, you can see a whole bunch of feathers there. It might just be from its past dinners. Here's another one out on one of these shrubs. And then here's another one in watching us. And I think this might be the final photo of these owls. So that was Genovesa. And then after that, we came back to Baltra. And I don't have pictures, but we took an early morning ride through a lagoon. And we saw amazing amount of wildlife there. Now, this was all done on a rubber dinghy. It was an early morning dinghy ride through mangroves. And because I had heavy camera gear and it was all on a dinghy, I didn't take any equipment with me. But that was a pretty amazing experience as well.
So Sanjay, on one of my slides, I have one of the pictures of the turtles that were in the mangrove. So if at some point in time I will be able to send my presentation, you should be able to see there were turtles and hammerhead sharks and all that. Water is so clear that you could actually see them all. You could see the bottom of that mangrove. So that was, and you're literally going through trees that are almost what, 2 feet apart, 2-3 feet apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that, I think that is my last slide. Let me, I see that there are some questions on the chat. So let's take some of these questions. I thought I had these questions open.
Yeah, I saw some. I answered one of them. Somebody had asked, and so for the benefit of everyone, they were asked about the guides, whether they are hired by the government or whether they were hired by the private boats. So from what we understand is the government controls them, and private boats actually hire them. And there's a hierarchy in which you go. I think there are more guides than the boats because they limit also how many boats go onto every island. And literally, the government controls where each boat can go, which island they can go to, etc. So the guides are controlled by the government, but they're hired by the private boats.
Exactly. So they're licensed by the government. Not everyone can be a guide, only if you're licensed. And then the companies that do the cruises, they hire them. So that's how they are. And like Ameeta said, these boats cannot go wherever they want. They are given, they're given an itinerary. They have to get to the island on a certain time, be out of there within a certain time. And they clearly don't want much human impact on these islands. So it's very tightly controlled by the government. I think the government is doing a good job there. So let's maybe, I don't see any other unanswered questions here. So maybe if you want to do Q&A.
If anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself and speak, or even you can put that question in the chat window.
I just want to say that the presentation was fantastic.
Amazing.
And
beautiful.
The photos were incredible. And the two of you coordinated really well. We feel like going there soon if we can. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ameeta, Sanjay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Srilekha, you're. Hi. Just grabbing a snack.
Amazing pictures. You should be in the National Geographic.
Hi.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Sanjay and Ameeta, thank you again for taking us on a wonderful ride to Galapagos Islands on the Sunday afternoon.
No, I apologize for mine. I think with a iPad you're limited. I could share. We tried it. Sanjay, me tried it in the morning, but we only tried sharing a picture. I didn't think that I couldn't share a PowerPoint presentation. So hopefully at some point I'll get it to either Preeti or Kedar and I'll be able to share it so you can relate back. But the main thing was I wanted Sanjay to share his pictures because he's got the most amazing pictures.
Ameeta, this is Vivek and Gayatri. And I want to thank both you and Sanjay for actually a guided tour. So both the images and the description was really so well coordinated. Is that it was not just a travel show; it was actually a guided tour. So thank you for doing it. so elegantly and in a so complete way. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ameeta. Thank you, Sanjay.
So we have one question here saying that did you go through some tour company, or was it did you all do the entire planning on your own?
Yeah, yeah.
So we didn't plan everything on our own. So like Ameeta said, first of all, we didn't have a whole lot of choice. But what we did was we found an Ecuadorian travel agent. And so we just approached her. I think we may have found her on TripAdvisor or something. And then she then said, okay, it's kind of late because I think this thing started in December and we may have started planning this in October or September, October, something like that. By then, a lot of it was sold out, but she did her research and gave us like 4 or 5 options of tours that were still available. And then we picked one based on the description. That's
And then to add to that, Sanjay and I reached out to 2 or 3 agents, and all of them came back to say that there's nothing available because you were right. Literally, we left on 26th of December and came back on the 10th of December, so that there was nothing else available. She came back with, I think, with the same company or with 2 or 3 different tours. Everybody said there was nothing available. Unfortunately, when we went back on the ship, some people canceled, so there were actually 2 rooms available. But other than that, they were all booked. So, but it's one of the best times to go because of the kind of season we were in.
Yeah, just if you're planning on going that time, of course, don't be like us. Start booking early, like in summer, ideally for December.
How was the weather, Ameeta and Sanjay? How was the weather then?
So I have to show you pictures of me. Other than my eyes, you couldn't see anything. We covered our heads, covered our faces. It was very hot, very dusty. But once you're in the water, it's nice. But yeah, it was, no matter what time of the year you go, it is very, very hot.
Yeah, actually, the other thing you got to remember in Ecuador is that it's on the equator, and so the sun is directly on top. And there were days when it was cloud cover, and I said, okay, it's cloudy, so who needs a hat?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, your face is completely sunburned, and there's no sun. So because the sun is so directly above, the ultraviolet rays go right through the clouds, and you get sunburned even if there's no sun. So you just have to remember that.
And then they also planned it well. We'd get up in the morning and there would be the first thing that was a snorkel ride, was a snorkeling, where most of the time we didn't go, the other group did go. And then they do a short tour, you come back for lunch and then you rest till 4 and then you go out till the time that you're supposed to come back. But even with that, it was absolutely burning hot. So.
You made how many days was it?
9 days?
Yeah, 9 days.
Yeah, so we did 3 days, 2 days in Quito, 9 days on the boat, and then while coming back, we just took a day tour. We had a flight at 6 o'clock in the evening. We reached at 9. We just went and saw Panama City. We arranged a private tour of Panama City and saw the Panama Canal. That's another one absolutely fabulous experience. But we just did a day tour, and then he dropped us back to the airport in time for a flight. Any of you who are interested, both Sanjay and I have with all my travels, wherever I've gone, I've got details of where we went, where we stayed, who we used. So anyone at any point in time can always reach out. I'll be your travel agent.
Sure. Thank you so much. My next question was that only.
Sanjay and Ameeta, really awesome presentation. And Sanjay, really fantastic photography. You're really a professional photographer.
Oh, thank you.
And maybe after seeing this presentation, it'll motivate Preeti and me to probably take early retirement after the quarantine and start traveling and follow your footsteps, Ameeta.
Yeah.
Where are you planning to go next?
Everything is cancelled. I had one. We were planning to do Africa. That's Sanjay, Sri Lanka. We were planning to do Africa, and then we cancelled that prior to this lockdown because of other reasons. But I have a trip coming up in September, and guess where it's originating? It's originating in Milan, Lake Como, but it's going to be cancelled for sure. So no plans till 2020. At this point, it's not worth doing anything. The trip, if it happens, we're still, we were 4 of us planning to go. We're not going to do it. It was a river cruise from Lake Como to Amsterdam.
Okay.
So nothing, no plans. and the other reason I had actually committed to not travel anywhere because of the Sammelan, so that I could, do whatever we had to do. But but otherwise now multitude of reasons, nothing till 2020. You'll see me here a lot.
How is Anisha?
Huh?
How is Anisha?
Anisha is good. She had logged in, but I don't know if she's still on. Can't tell.
So she didn't come on that one, but she comes with you.
She logged into. No, she wanted to listen to this presentation, so she had logged.
She went on a honeymoon.
No, at that time she had. So they were on their honeymoon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Anisha got married in August.
Congratulations.
But we'd gone to Turkey, and Anisha came with us to Turkey. Sanjay had last minute work, so he couldn't go, but Srilekha, me and Anisha went to, we did Turkey in 2018.
18, yeah. It was a beautiful, beautiful trip. Lot of very different trips together.
Anyway, thanks Preeti and Kedar for arranging this. It's a great idea. And so again, I apologize for my slides, but hopefully mine was supposed to be just the gist of how everything came to be, and then I was going to leave it to my photographer brother to think so. But unfortunately, I couldn't even present what little bit I had. But hopefully, you got the gist of it.
Definitely, Ameeta, and we actually felt like we traveled with you. So thank you so much, all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Nice to see you, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks for being my partner in crime, Sanjay.
Yeah,
Right away, agreed.
anytime.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Hi, Kushi. Bye, Kunal.
And great job, Preeti and Kedar.
Yeah, thanks for organizing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful things. Congratulations. It's turning out beautiful.
Thank
They're
you.
doing these guys are doing such an amazing
Aren't
job.
they
There's
amazing?
no words to describe. I don't think our lockdown would have been so much fun. Now we're actually getting withdrawal. What do we do once we open up? So they're doing an amazing job, really.
Thank you, Ameeta. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Sanjay, for doing it with me.
Yeah.
Bye,
Sure.
Ameeta.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Kushi. I've got Maktullah tuj khatir makam doll dawarle aay taman tumagal doll asa tugal dik san doll asa doll within a doll within a doll. So त्या मग तुगल next time मेळेल तेन्ना तुका म्हाका उगडास करी आनी तू खाण दिवंका.
Okay.
Bye. Thanks, Preeti.
Bye, Ameeta. Thank you.
I'll try and send it if I can.
Sure.
If not, whatever, whenever.
Bye. Nezalari, the other option is pictures to kanji share drive or ghalari.
No, pictures were similar to what Sanjay had, but they were from my phone. But
Okay.
the group ke lele,
Bye.
and so then you have the context to it. But if I can actually airdrop it to someone who's close, otherwise I don't have a laptop, so sir, I won't be able to do it. You know.
Bye. The other option is screenshots. If it's not too many slides.
Yeah, something like that I'll do. I'll try and send it to you.
But thank you. In spite of technical difficulties, it went really well. So thank you so much. And you both have put so much effort into this. So thank you.
No, you all put so much effort. We have to do some little bit, this is that, and always willing to share all the fun travels. It's a passion. So.
Magar favorite part is shile. Khate tower da ke lele. And the chicken big. Magar favorite part is shile. Ik tower shile. The big bench is shile.
Oh. Now, but Mughal favorite part Ashile is that sea lion. Oh my God! So much. Laggi vuchulari ashpaleta tup karta. Then we go round to the other side. Oh my God! The growl he gave us.
And एक baby follow करता है खेनो तुमका.
And the baby follow is so cute. That's picture असं लगे. त्या हम तुम कशी ना कशी पेटायता.
हाँ. And ह्याचे videos असलारी please share.
Yeah. Definitely. थोड़ी videos है असती.
Magal favorite part आशिल्लें the bird the land iguana पळयत stare करतालो.
कल पळयता?
The bird the land iguana was staring.
Why. That was classic. That was classic. Really classic. But
And
the land
my second favorite part आशिल्लें can the bird the utkan sam करशिल्लो.
That is also cute. But Anik's favorite part Nashila, where it's got the fish in its mouth. Where that was also
that was amazing photography, ne?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
Because his camera is also amazing, no? So he captures all that. I've got this some of the same pictures, of course, luggage na, but mine are nothing, you know.
Actually, my favorite part the crab.
Oh yeah.
They were so colorful.
They were so colorful. Yeah.
Very colorful.
Yeah.
The bird var entagala chin karpitana.
Anyway, chalo. Thanks so much, Preeti.
Thank you, Ameeta.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
Ameeta.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.